Hello, everybody. Let's get morbid and nerdy. Should you use astrology to predict death? No, absolutely not. You should not. You will never sleep again if you try to do that. Um, you can only see energy, you cannot know what it will do. Having said that, there is just kind of a perfect storm in Val Kilmer's chart that I wanted to show you a couple of things that do tend to happen when someone dies. But first, I want to say I really enjoyed Val Kilmer's work. When you read about him or know about him as a human being, pretty interesting guy. And I was watching Top Secret over the holidays because that was one of my favorite movies of his, especially as a kid, because that's like the level of my sense of humor. I'm a very simple creature. And I noticed that he's a double Capricorn, here and here, with Saturn conjunct the Sun, which is even more Capricorn, and then an Aquarius moon, and Saturn co-rules Aquarius, so that's even more Saturn. And then Pluto makes a trine to this Sun-Saturn conjunction, and Neptune makes a sextile to this. So there was a ton of energy, intense energy toward his Sun, which is your identity, and it's in the 12th house, so subconscious house. That's an intense amount of energy. And then here too, with this conjunction of Jupiter and Mars and Mercury, that's a crazy amount of energy all in one place. And then having Neptune on the midheaven, really good for creative careers and really good for literally pretending to be someone else. Also really good for having weird rumors about yourself and a public image that you cannot particularly control. Good luck quelling rumors when you have Neptune there. Just saying. Anyway, remember how to do transit math? That's what I love to call it. That is when you look to the sign on the beginning of a house. So you see all of these lines, and wherever you see lines, you see signs, or at least the glyphs for the signs. And that tells you what sign rules that house, and every sign has a planetary ruler. So you look to whether that planetary ruler is taking or making a transit when you're determining whether there's anything going on with that house. Actually, usually you do it the opposite way. You say, oh, the sun is getting a transit, what sign is ruled by the sun? But we're doing this a little bit reverse here because we have the luxury of knowing what actually happened. So the death house is the 8th house. That is here. You can see the number 8 here. And what's this? This is Virgo. And what planet rules Virgo? Mercury. And so you can see that his natal Mercury is here in the 11th house with these guys. And that it was taking a transit from Saturn. And then Sky Mercury was making a transit. So Sky Mercury here was conjunct the South Node. And when you see South Node conjunctions, again, there's a ton of ways to interpret everything, so I don't want you to walk away from this super paranoid. But when you have things go over your South Node, that can be fated meetings, conclusions of relationships, conclusions of life chapters. In terms of Mercury, it can be news that isn't good, so information that isn't good, or hearing from someone from your past or with whom you have quote-unquote karmic ties. The South Node and North Node are karmic in nature, meaning that they're like transits to them or transits of them portend developments in the plot of your life. I think that that's a fair way to put it. South Node influences tend to be more negative or restrictive, and North Node influences tend to be expansive or future oriented. So let's say South Node is past oriented. You probably also noticed that in addition to Mercury, there's everything else, and that's me being sarcastic, but the Saturn, the North Node, Venus, Mercury, and then Neptune are all together in this brick of energy. So Mercury's been moving super slowly, Venus has been moving super slowly, basically at the speed of Saturn, which is, Saturn's moving pretty quickly right now. So they're kind of matching each other, which is weird. But the North Node, transiting North Node, is also expansive in nature. So it's making all of this stuff feel really big and intense and honestly somewhat negative, I think. If you're aware of what's going on in the world right now, there's a lot of people having a lot of anxiety and freaking out about developments having to do with finances. That's Venus. It's right here. And Saturn is constriction, restriction, and depression. Yeah, well, I'll just leave it at that. Val Kilmer was also having a nodal reversal, meaning that the South Node was on the North Node and the North Node was on the South Node. Again, that tends to be a chapter change in your life, for better, for worse. It's just like part of the plot ends and then new plot picks up sometimes, and sometimes, actually, I can't say this is the first time that I've seen this, because I've probably seen someone die at a nodal reversal before. I just can't think of it. I suppose it's never outside of the realm of possibility, but I certainly do think that it's interesting that he died at a nodal reversal, which just kind of makes it feel like a soul plan of like, you get this much time and this was the time being up. And for just to be really clear, I don't think that death is the worst thing in the world. So yes, I'm being slightly morbid, but in the spirit of that his soul lives on, you know, and that we can celebrate this person for who he was and his gifts, artistic gifts, and the what he leaves behind in terms of his body of work. So maybe that's me being lackadaisical about death. Accuse me of that. That's fine. I won't be offended. Because I kind of am. Because, you know, of being me and what I can do. I'm okay with it. Anyway, here's something I do see a lot. Because when people die, of course I look at their charts to see what was going on. Because how am I going to learn otherwise? Mars had just crossed this angle, but Mars is moving really slowly. So when Mars is moving its normal speed, it's going at 44 minutes a day. And I'm not correcting this for precession. So Mars would have been just going over this descendant line. What it means when Mars goes over a line or hits one of your lights, so sun or moon, is, especially in somebody who's in really ill health, they tend to get a burst of energy that then kind of flames them out. So it's that, I'm sure you've heard of this happen to a loved one or someone you know who has died, where the day before, or they're walking, they're talking, it seems like they're getting better, and then they just tank. That's often because Mars just recently hit something that was energizing, and then Mars began to move on, and that energy went away. Again, I see this all the time, so that's pretty common. Mars hitting an angle or a light does not mean you're going to die. I just want to be so clear about this. Because look, Mercury is the ruler of his 8th house. Mercury is a really fast-moving planet. If you have Mercury, the Sun, the Moon, Venus, or even Mars as the ruler of your 8th house, those suckers are good, with the exception of Mars. They're making laps around your chart constantly. So Mercury would have done a lap entirely around his chart every year of his life, and he didn't die. It was just this time. So, what it does mean, though, for people who have a quick moving planet, either ruling the 8th house, or I see this a lot with people with a quick moving planet, it ruling the 12th house, which isn't the case here because this 12th house ruler would be Jupiter. You can get a lot of anxiety because they're water houses, and the 8th house has to do with your more immediate subconscious, so like motivations that you don't necessarily understand. And your 12th house is much more the ethereal subconscious, so when you're like really in the cosmic sea of things. And if you have a fast-moving planet ruling either one of those, it just gives you anxiety because it's always doing something. You don't get a lot of times of calm because it's just constantly in motion, and so you have like just these subconscious inklings coming out of nowhere or seemingly nowhere. That can be tough. Anyway, really just want to reiterate the point that you can't predict death, but you can see it after the fact. And in my experience, you're really more likely to see signs of grief in the charts of the people all around you, and then not your own. That's when I would worry. That's when I would get paranoid. That's when I would start trying to wrap things up, because I'd be like, everybody around me is grieving but me. That's what I've actually seen a lot of when somebody who I personally know dies, is that the charts of their friends and their family members are really messed up. So that maybe that can make you paranoid instead. I did say we're getting morbid, and that is what we're doing. Okay, final thing. So about 7 weeks ago, Saturn, now I've confused them. I'm looking directly at them and saying the other planet's name. Saturn started squaring Val Kilmer's Jupiter. So this is some unpleasantness in terms of your sense of optimism and buoyancy. Then Saturn squared Mars. And whenever Saturn does something harsh to Mars, by which I mean conjunction, opposition, or square, you get weak. You lose energy. Your body does not have the wherewithal to fight as hard as normal. Additionally, Mars went retrograde. Some of us are more sensitive to that than others. I'm gesturing to myself. I'm so sensitive. I hate Mars retrograde. Anyway, that certainly wasn't going to help anything. But I also saw this with Michelle Trachtenberg's death. She had Saturn in aspect to Mars just before she died as well. So a loss of energy and your body's ability to fight. And then Saturn squared Mercury. So I think that was the non-winning recipe here. Although this one just kind of feels like time's up. But then again, most deaths feel like that to me, because I don't want to sound like I'm thinking so highly of myself, but this one just feels peaceful, of that he's okay. And I tend to get that when I talk about people who have died, one way or another, of either they need a cosmic hug or they're okay, and this one feels okay. So this may be morbid, it may be sad, it may be weird, but it is pretty textbook of this is what I would be looking for when I'm doing this after the fact. Again, like I said, I looked at this chart a couple of months ago, and I was absolutely not like, this dude's gonna die, because I don't think like that. And I don't think you should either. But I did want to show you what that recipe can look like, because sharing this knowledge is important, and that's why I do what I do. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't, I'll see you next time, and hopefully I'll talk about something happier. Thank you for being with me.